Welcome to Daredevil in the Details, a show that explores and dotes on the philosophy and themes of Netflix's Daredevil, a digression collection brought to you by A Method to the Madness and ZeroIndent. I'm author DC McNeil, and I'm joined, as always, by Patrick from A Method to the Madness. Pat, we're in the middle of our Defenders experience. I don't know what else. Our slog, our marathon.
You know what? I'm starting to come around on our decision to include the Defenders in this. I think it actually is quite worthwhile, mainly because I like the rewrite that we're doing along with the series.
Yeah,
as I'm watching this, I keep imagining our version, and I'm like, and I feel like I'm starting to overlay our version on top of what I'm actually seeing, and I'm like tricking myself into liking it.
Right, you're sort of doing a headcanon type situation.
Yeah, because the more we talk about this, because our rewrite is basically like taking the seeds of what's already there and like just reshuffling it a little bit, not too drastically. And so it's very easy to do that while I'm watching the show. We've made it easy for me to do that. So
okay,
that's my experience watching this. Yeah.
What you're saying, Pat, is someone should have edited these scripts once, like just done a quick once over.
Yeah, I know, right? If there was anything other than a first draft, it would be like kind of decent.
There's so many good ideas in here as well. That's what I keep coming back to. I guess as like a the thing that has sustained me. I really struggled with these two episodes. Like the first episode, I maybe tried to start 4 or 5 times before I actually committed to sitting down and watching it.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I've been having trouble with these ones. I've literally got like a list of I never do this. I got to the end of these 2 episodes and I just started writing down a list of like unforced errors that these 2 episodes make. It's long. Like,
damn.
Yeah, so look forward to me just yelling grumpily about this show that's bad. But yeah, I mean, look, there's lots of good stuff in here. There's lots of really interesting ideas. Let's just get stuck into it. Oh, I did want to ask. So we watched episodes 5 and 6. So there's two episodes left, which we'll cover next recording session. How are you feeling about like? I guess, you know, are you starting to see the payoff of like pushing all these characters together into this as its own show, or are we still in the boat of like maybe this would have worked better as like a natural part of someone else's series? Like, I wanted to check in as far as like conceptually, do we think how do we think that's working or not working at this stage?
No, it's not working. You know what? I think they should have made this an Iron Fist show, really. Iron Fist should have been the Defenders.
Yeah, there should have just been season 2 of Iron Fist, because season 2 of Iron Fist is not good.
Yeah,
and this would have been a better season.
That's one of the only Defenders series shows I haven't watched. That and Punisher season 2. But yeah, because a lot of it, the Iron Fist is kind of a lot of the plot revolves around him. It just seems like a very natural thing to fit in there, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem, like, the plot revolves around him, but it's not his story. Like, I think that's the biggest issue this show has. Like, this is what is so bizarre to me. The 2 protagonists, if you really, like, look at what the show is doing, the 2 protagonists are Matt and somehow Colleen. I know I was saying that last time, but it's only gotten more the case. Like, there's literally an emotional arc in these 2 episodes about Colleen realizing that she's actually one of them, and she's not like she's not Danny Rand's girlfriend. She's a defender along with them. And Matt has to learn to step up and become a leader and lead these people. Like, they're the 2 protagonists, but Danny Rand is the plot critical. Like, he's a plot device.
He's a living MacGuffin, really.
Oh my god. He's a living MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Holy
Danny MacGuffin.
shit. Oh, that makes this show so much worse. Damn, I didn't even realize that. Oh, I guess we'll get into why. Fucking hell. Okay, let's talk about episode 5. Take Shelter. This was written by Lauren Schmidt, Hisrick, Douglas Petrie, and Marco Ramirez, because how could this have been written by any less than 3 people? And this was directed by Steven Surgic, who's back at the helm. My intuition, by the way, is that Petrie and Ramirez wrote the initial scripts, and then when they fired all of the writers, I don't know, I don't want to get too much into like the production of this, but basically what was happening around this time is they fired all of the writers that were working on the Netflix shows, and they just started hiring like studio executive, like studio EPs to come and write and manage and run all of it, because they wanted it to run like a like they wanted it to be this sort of cross-promotional, like symbiotic kind of like, if you watch one of the shows, you have to watch all of them. And the writers were like, well, no, I don't want to ruin my show in order to do that. So they just fired all the writers and then brought in all these EPs to come and remanage the shows. So that's how you get the scenario where the original script by Petrie and Ramirez is just like, they've probably bought Schmidt, Hesrick in, you know, they would have brought them in to come and make that happen. Is kind of historically what's happening.
I don't know if you heard, but the history has kind of repeated itself recently with that new Daredevil show.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's looking grim out there, boys.
It's not looking good.
You know, it's supposed to be a road to Born Again, but it looks like that may never happen. So
yeah, I think he's just going to remain dead.
He's just, and you know what? Maybe that's okay. Maybe it's fine if things end. As much as I'm looking forward to that as an opportunity. All right, Pat, let's hear the summary, and then we'll get stuck into my laundry list of complaints, I guess is what you would call this episode of our podcast.
In an operatic opening from a different genre of television, the Hand descend on the restaurant. Matt forces Elektra outside, leaving the rest of the gang to fend off the many combatants. Luke manages to capture Sawandi, and we regroup in an abandoned theatre. Sawandi threatens the group's loved ones, prompting yet another split of pairings, Cage and Rand, Daredevil and Jones. Cage and Rand head to Claire's apartment with Colleen as backup. A resurrected Bakudo confronts Colleen, scores a decent cut across her stomach before parting ways. Matt goes to see Karen, convincing her to head to the police station for safety along with the others. While Jessica tries to protect Trish, Daredevil returns and handily knocks Murakami's block off. Back at the Hand, the fingers quarrel. Daredevil's return puts pressure on Alexandra's reliance on Elektra. Murakami suggests they cut out Alexandra. Meanwhile, Sawandi tries to escape, but Stick cuts his head off from his shoulders, the first finger of the Hand severed.
This is such a structurally interesting episode to me. I really like the... Okay, well, actually, no, you know what? We'll get into that in a second. We got to talk about this opening sequence. I was watching this, and the whole time, I was like, I don't know what the fuck this is. Like, I just don't know what show this is from. Like, this feels like
Remind me what happens.
So, it's like, they play this, like, operatic kind of progression. It kind of sounds like what's that? What's the tune where it's like in the halls of the Mountain King or whatever? Like
right.
It's that style of music, and then it's sort of a montage of the bad guys getting ready to descend on the restaurant.
Okay, yeah. All I remember is pretty much Murakami coming in through the roof, the skylight thingo. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 2-minute shot compositional shot montage composed of that beginning to happen. And then it as the music hits its crescendo, he jumps in. But it's just like the choice of music, the need to put this in here at all. Like, it just doesn't feel, I don't know. It's weird, man. Like,
the show kind of does have this like operatic kind of a bit of sophisticated style it tries to go for with like Alexandra and I guess the Hand in general.
Which seems to run contrast to like the fact that this is supposed to be street level and like grungy and grimy.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. The fact that it stuck out to me so much probably is indicative of it not doing something it's supposed to, or it being weird. In what capacity, I think your individual mileage is going to vary. But for me, I just didn't like it. Or it pulled me out of the story, which is like the worst thing an opening can commit, because it's supposed to be setting up the episode. Yeah, and I'm sitting there being like, what the fuck is this? It's not great. And then we get the messiest little fight sequence in the restaurant with some of the worst dialogue the show has committed to so far. A great excerpt that I have here, Pat, is while fighting Elektra, Luke says, "God, she's annoying." And then there's a beat, and Jessica says, "Tell me about it." Genius.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the start of the episode. Like, I feel like these two episodes really have some trash dialogue. It's kind of shocking. It's really some first draft kind of stuff.
It's not really like first draft kind of stuff. I was thinking about this as I was kind of doing the summaries the other night, and like it's not just that the dialogue feels like first draft dialogue. We touched on this a little bit, but I want to kind of dig into it. It's also that it's the most like if you ask like a fan fiction writer what would this character say in this scenario, every single piece of dialogue is consistently the first answer they would come up with. Like it's not even like,
well, I say first draft because it seems like placeholder dialogue. I guess that's what I mean by that. It's like
yeah, that's exactly the way to say it, because that's kind of what I was getting at with the fan fiction thing, which is like, what's your first impulse, and then you would come back and try and make it layered and dynamic.
Yeah, exactly.
And they just didn't.
We'll come back to it. Yeah,
yeah, it's rough, man, and like the delivery, you can feel them struggling to make it interesting.
Yeah,
as much as they're both fantastic, like actors, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
it's brutal, man. And then we get this gal does her magic force palm thing to knock Danny off his ass. And then we get a scene later where she does it to a door, and the door like flies up. But the way that it's framed, it seems like she didn't touch the door, and it's like actually a force push.
Yeah, isn't that consistent with how it's portrayed? I feel like she never actually touches anything. It's always like just before the.
I thought in DareDevil she maybe I'm wrong. I thought the implication was even with the slightest touch she could send someone flying.
I'm not too sure. I always saw it as a force push.
Okay, well that is worse then. Cool. I was like, is that a cut it like an editing error? But not cool. All right, fine. Boy, yeah. Look, okay. So this is where we start to get into like, I don't know that this show has thought through its sequencing. So Luke disappears and the gang is like, oh no, they've kidnapped Luke Cage. Because they drive a truck into him. And then literally the next scene when they're all getting back together and regrouping, Luke turns up and he's like, I've captured Sawande. And like, what? Like, why have them think that he was it's just, why not have him just capture Sawande at the restaurant? This, like, it's not like a tense, like, you know, episode where we're like, oh my God, they've got Luke Cage. It's literally the next scene. So was there a plot beat where he was kidnapped for a while that they cut out? Or like, I
don't know. I guess because we already saw him and Sawande go at it. So maybe they didn't want like a double beat, but they needed the end result to be Sawande captured. So like, there's just like, let's do a bait and switch of it and have Luke literally carried off screen and have that resolve.
Okay, you know what? It would be a double beat, but that's no excuse for this bizarre choice. I understand what you're saying. It is an explanation for that. But I mean, when we get to the next episode, clearly they don't mind doing double beats. So, in fact, they seem to specialize in it. I did note here that we do get confirmation finally. Someone says it out loud that Alexandra is the leader. I don't know who says it, but I think it's when the other hand are talking to each other or something like that. And I think it might be Murakami, or he says something to that effect. I can't recall. But yeah, weird little sequencing issue there. Man, I keep, we then, as we're back at the hand, Alexandra's doing her sort of, she's having this relationship scene with Elektra, where Elektra's clearly conflicted because Matt said Elektra and she remembered it, right? So she's starting to have this conflict, but it starts with her basically informally threatening Alexandra, being like, I think she says this multiple times in the show, where Alexandra will be standing there and Elektra will turn up and like pull a sword on her or whatever, and then Alexandra talks her down. And this scene should be like really dynamic and like tense, but because Alexandra is so formal and closed off, it just kind of like, and because Elektra can't really talk because she hasn't got to that part of her recovery yet, it's just this like slow, stilted, tensionless, you know how it's gonna end, which is like Alexandra's gonna talk her, like there's just nothing at stake in this moment.
I keep thinking about your recasting of Alexandra to Ian McShane.
How good would that be?
And just like kind of, you know, really illuminates how much is missing from casting someone like Sigourney Weaver, which, you know, again, I like her, but she just brings nothing to this character.
You can imagine that Elektra draws the sword and then Ian McShane goes, "Black sky, my dear, don't be so dramatic." Like you could, you know, it'd be like, such a ghoulish and unsophisticated, you know, like you could imagine him bringing some gravity to it, or like some flair, or like Sorry, I'm getting carried away because it's just like, even you put her here, have her just say interesting shit. Like, she's been alive for like hundreds of years. You know, if you put someone like Ian McShane in there, you could start to like sneak in, kind of like, you know, tumbling parables about things of his past, or, you know, like when she does that, you know, he could be like, you know, I once knew a general in, you know, like I knew a cowboy who used to do that, and, you know, he met his untimely end, and you know, you could start to use the fact that they've been around for hundreds of years to build up some kind of pathos for that character and some kind of worldview, you know.
And that's Ian McShane's specialty as well. It's like recounting memories as if they're soliloquies that he's practiced a million times. Like, that's his thing.
Exactly. And it just seems like a perfect fit, Pat.
I know. I'm with you.
Maybe in the Sliding Doors parallel universe, they got Ian McShane, and this was the best show on the planet.
Yeah.
And they're up to Defender season 6. Damn. Yeah, it's just not a good scene. Something that I've started to actually really enjoy about, here's a good thing. I wrote a good thing down.
Okay.
So something I really quite like is, we then get, the guys mix it up with Sawande, and he tries to get in their heads, and then they decide they're going to go and make sure their loved ones are safe at the police station. And throughout the entire scene, literally every character in the room, including Sawande, including Stick, literally everyone either says it out loud or calls Danny an idiot. Like, it's like just the complete disrespects they put on my boy is 10 out of 10. Because he Danny has not learned to shut the fuck up Friday. Like, he just, every time it's like, Danny, shush, the adults are talking, he just can't help himself. And it's a really great scene that shows how frustrated the rest of the guys are with him at this point, where they're like, you need to like stop trying to contribute because you don't got it. Like, you don't have it like that. You're a good fighter and you have this magical power, but like you like this blind kind of optimistic, we just should do the right thing for the sake of it, like, is a problem in these scenes where he is the reason why Sawande is able to get under their skin, because he takes the bait every time. And it's really great to see everyone recognize that.
They really play up that characteristic of Danny's character in this scene, which is fine. Like, it leads to more conflict. But yeah, it's again, it's just like very kind of contrived, but it's all right.
Yeah, it's contrived in a way that makes you dislike Danny, which I think is fine. Because, I mean, the work of season 2 of Iron Fist is redeeming Danny as a character and making him into a whole person, which by the end of it, it's like a bad season of television, but the ideas in it are really compelling, where it's like, how do you go from like how does he actually come to embody all of the training from Kunlun and actually become the Iron Fist. Like, he has the power, but he isn't the Iron Fist. He's
That's kind of what
a
they do
kid.
with him in Luke Cage as well.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he's on the other side of that by the time he comes back in Luke Cage. It's pretty interesting. I also kind of like, so yeah, they mix it up. Actually, no, yeah. So what happens is, so that they're sort of, Danny and Colleen are like doing a perimeter sweep, and Danny has the beginning of, he has his little alleyway fight, and the first like 5 like physical engagements are really good. Like, it's the first time the choreography in the show has looked great, and then it just dissolves into a mess of cuts. But the choreography and the show composition of like the first 2 or 3 cuts, and like so the first 5 or 6 blows are really good. Where he's walking down the alley, and the guy comes up behind him and goes to swing, and Danny ducks and goes bap bap. And then the guy comes for him and goes to like do a big swing.
Yeah.
And Danny just steps aside and elbow. It's like really clean and interesting. And it feels like 2 people fighting instead of what I think we've said a lot of this feels like, which is people who learn the choreo on the day and are just trying to remember it. It really felt like they were trying to hurt each other.
I remember what scene you're talking about now. I agree, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the one they did, and then that was it. The rest of it's bad. Obviously, the twist, right, is that Bakuto is back from the dead, and he and Colleen have. Actually, no. You know what? This is also a sick little fight where she has her katana, and she's trying to cut him, and he's not even fighting back. He's just kind of like stepping around it.
Was he that badass in Iron Fist? I can't remember.
No, not at all.
I feel like he wasn't. Yeah.
Maybe coming back from the dead gives you like +5 dexterity or something. Like, I don't know, but my man is agile. It's cool. It's some anime shit, but it's cool. And then he does this. There's a really great little conclusion to this scene where, he's basically like, you still got a lot to learn. Like, I cast you out to make you stronger. Like, someone's finally doing a villain speech 5 episodes into a show with like 5 villains. Someone's finally doing one. I guess Murakami kind of does one when he's gutting that bear or whatever. But yeah,
this is exactly how my reunion with my ex-cult leader went as well. Just
is
so
it?
You know. Yeah, it was pretty similar to this.
Did you get cut too, or?
I got cut emotionally.
Oh, Pat, aren't those the deepest of wounds? Yeah, look, whenever I confront my ex-cult leaders, it never ends well, What's kind of interesting? What's kind of interesting about it, though, I guess, like schematically, is I said the word interesting. I meant bad. I was like organizing the thought in my head, and then I was like,
bad things are interesting.
Bad things, you know what?
You would know. You fucking
I would
did
know.
a whole.
It's my main thing. Yeah, go read my
thing.
book that I wrote about bad things being interesting.
Sorry, 1 second.
So, okay, what I was going to say is, so Bakuto coming back could be interesting. I think the problem it presents is the idea here should be that as the show goes on, more and more members of the hand fall until we're left with like a penultimate villain to defeat. And the first time that one of them dies, which is Sawande dying, we just get a replacement with Bakuto. Like, they just go and grab another one off the shelf. And I think it just reduces some of the impact of Sawande's death. Like, instead of it starting to feel more frantic, it just feels like they replaced one guy for another. And I think it alleviates some of the, and in some ways it's required at a sequencing level to allow the members of the hand to gang up on Alexandra because they have the numbers now. But I also think that robs Murakami of a really interesting problem to have, which is he needs to convince Gao to gang up on Alexandra. And instead, he just gets Bakuto so they have the numbers just like automatically. Like, I think it both reduces Sawande's death and reduces the conflict that must be overcome for Murakami to get what he wants, which is the really interesting parts of the hand as a group of villains. Like, it kind of neuters both things in the story and reduces their impact, I feel.
I'm not usually a fan of when shows or movies go through villains like one at a time as if they're video game bosses or something like that. Yeah, but in this case, I mean, it just seems like the right thing to do. There's 5 of them, and the 5 leaders, and so it just seems like, yeah, that's what you should do with the show. But then obviously, like, the good thing to do would be to, as the numbers get smaller, make it like complicated and infighting and stuff like that. Yeah,
tense, and like have the same, and it's like it's a echo of what's happening for the heroes. As they get closer and closer to the finale, they need to band closer and closer together. Like, you get that nice thematic mirroring. I don't know. There's lots of opportunities there to like kind of, make it work for you. Instead, I think it just kind of works against them by lack of attention rather than anything deliberate. Like I'm not attributing this to them making a writing mistake. I'm attributing this to them not making a writing choice, which are very different things sometimes. But I mean, yeah, it's a good little sword fight. And he basically, Bakuto basically goads Colleen, and he's like, yeah, I did it to make you stronger, but like, you haven't learned shit. Like, you still don't got it like that. You still ain't anybody that I care about. You're nothing. And he cuts her, and he's about to kill her, and before he can, Luke just like turns up and just throws him away, and it's excellent. I love a big strong guy just chucking people.
And there's also some of like Bakuto's boys in the back. They're just like kind of chilling there, I suppose.
Yeah, well, they're chilling. Well, because it's like theater, right? Like, Bakuto's sort of like taunting her and sort of he's toying with her, right?
What happens after Luke throws him off? I forget.
Luke tosses him away, and he's like, yeah, bloody get out of here, bloody get out of here. And then Danny's like, he says some Danny Rand shit, and then the guys are like, the guys rush over to help Colleen, and then the camera cuts back, and Bakuto and his boys are gone.
All right.
They vanished into the night, Pat. In the half a second, everyone looked at Colleen.
Yeah, well, that's if Daredevil can do it, surely ninjas can.
Hey, you know what? There's the one people they get a pass. They can do it. They're ninjas. I've seen Batman Begins. I understand how that works. It is also very funny to me that
they're
like,
just around the corner.
Yeah, they're like lying in the grass, just behind the bollard or whatever. I don't quite. Yeah, I think this is a good moment for Colleen's character. I don't know why this is here. Like, again, it makes her the most interesting part of this episode, but like, at like a structural level, I don't get it. Like, I've already said, the kind of main reasons, but I also think just like for an episode like this, this should either be the finale or it should be less of a bit like, it's just awkwardly placed. It's like, about 25 minutes in, halfway through, doesn't really complicate or progress the actual narrative, and then Colleen's part of it gets resolved in this episode. So I'm not really sure what to do with this at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess maybe all it does is introduce Bakuto back into the fold, because I mean, as you said, like, Colleen's little emotional arc gets resolved when, I don't know, she finds her courage, I guess, when then she gets like slightly slashed across the belly, nothing a band-aid can't fix.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know, it's weird. It's inconsequential is what this seems like.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of the sequences in the show seem like.
Yeah. It seems like they had to put something here, and they were like, well, we need another action scene. And then,
what would you have done with Colleen's arc?
Pat, you're asking the really good questions. I've written down here in my notes, how would I fix this? I think that I think that you don't bring Bakuto back, because dumb. I think instead you have one of the other bad guys. I'm thinking maybe Murakami only because he's the most threatening and interesting. You have him show up and kind of hold Bakuto's death over Colleen's head and kind of taunt her with it and be like, you couldn't even save your own mentor. Like, how are you going to save a city? You're not even special. You know, you have a katana? You didn't even earn that katana. You fucking stole it. Oh, you walk around in the Iron Fist shadow and you pretend like you're one of them. You're nothing. And then that would be good. You know, it would give her motivation to want to kill Murakami, which could then give you an in-ramp later for her to realize that killing him would make her no better than him or something, whatever that ends up being.
That I like how that lays out the structure as well. When you already have one of the 5 members dead at the beginning, you know, it's sort of, you have a jumping off point for their threat of not being immortal anymore. And then in the actual show, you have Sawanda get killed, so that's 2 down. That could be a catalyst for the conflict between Murakami and Alexandra. And then, you know, as you said earlier, like, they bring back Bakuto so that Murakami could have the numbers. But I think even if you just had Murakami and Gao against Alexandra, that still effectively works the same way. And so 2 of the members dead could, you know, facilitate Gao and Murakami betraying Alexandra.
Well, I
feel like that would be very efficient.
This is also a good moment for Murakami to try and turn Colleen to his side to help him ambush Danny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the plan is to do something without Alexandra, maybe Murakami, like, emotionally in response to Sawande's death and the threat of mortality, does this really brash thing and goes out and tries to bend Colleen to his will, and it fails, right? Like, because that's what this conversation should be. It shouldn't be him trying to kill her. It should be him trying to turn her with her guilt over Bakuto's death. And that breaks bad immediately and creates a problem for them. And maybe in doing so, he accidentally gives them a lead or something like that, which brings them closer to discovering their plan. Like, you know, this should backfire in some meaningful way at a plot level when it comes to our heroes working out what the fuck is up.
I like that a lot, actually. Yeah. That's good. And isn't Colleen Japanese as well?
Yeah.
So he could still be doing his usual speaking Japanese thing, and Colleen would understand him. So, you know, there's a lot that works there. Yeah.
Is his Japanese good? I think we've talked about this before. Yeah. I like his I don't know how else to say it other than, like, I like his affectation. Like, just the way he, like, his body language and the cadence of his delivery. He's just a really compelling character to have on screen. Kind of like, it doesn't matter what he's doing.
Yeah, he's very, like, calm and collected all the time. Yeah, I like him too.
But he's that calm and collected where it feels like if you pushed him a little bit, he would just stab you.
Right.
Like,
there should be a scene like that where he does lash out very violently in, like, the span of 5 seconds, and then he goes back to how he was.
Well, that's kind of what I'd like to see if you had him in this scene, right? Is, you know, Colleen, and maybe she plays into it a little bit, and we start to think, oh, is she going to turn? You know, she gets closer, and, you know, he's like, you know, you've always been one of us. You know, you too can be immortal. You know, life itself, whatever. And then she can try and betray him in that moment, right? Just use that to get close and pull her sword. And that's where you could then have him just, like, in a flash of violence, brutalize her, like, instantly. Like, not this, like, stepping around the sword or whatever, but, like, she could go for one swing. He could grab her hand, you know, twist her wrist so the sword falls away. And then he could just go, like, bap, 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 and, like, just knock her fucking block off immediately. And then start beating her, right? And that's when the good guys turn up to save her.
Damn. Boom, bam, bop.
Boom, bam, bop. Those are in my edit, those are the sound effect overlays. It's not the, like,
right.
whoosh, it's bop, beep, boop, you know?
This is starting to feel a lot more like just Daredevil, which is great. I think, yeah.
I mean, you could have him do some, like, elaborate, ancient, fucking whatever you want to do there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I just think that the key there is, like, you want to see that potential spasm of violence, and because he's, like, this ultimate hunter, right? He could even threaten her, like, and be like, you know, I will track you to the ends of the fucking earth, or like, you know, that there's something there where the consequence of her doing this creates that conflict between them that could then live on into a Iron Fist season 2 if one would so desire, to keep him alive, you know. Yeah. Anyway, those are kind of my thoughts there. I just think this is a pretty poorly thought out decision in general for this show. We do then get a scene I've wanted to see the entire season, which is Matt going to see Karen. What do you make of this scene?
Does anything worthwhile happen in the scene? I don't think so.
They tiptoe up to the edge of like just stuff I want to see, and then they just don't do it. Like it's sufficiently awkward, which I'm fine with. But like the only redeeming quality here for me, at least, like, or the only interesting thing for me here is that Karen knows that he's not willing to say that he's being Daredevil again, right? Like she knows that he won't say it out loud. And so she just pushes him to say it. And I think that's kind of a mistake. Like if I were thinking about this and trying to think about how to fix it or make it interesting is maybe a better way of saying it, is what are the threads you could pull on here when it comes to their romantic relationship, when it comes to the fact that Elektra has been resurrected? What's the thread you could pull on in this conversation that Karen would be, you know, my thinking here is like the most interesting dialogue comes from two people having a conversation and they're talking about the same subject, but they have different motivations and views of what that subject means in the context of the conversation, right? The classic one that we always talk about is the opening scene of The Social Network, where it's, which, you know, is Sorkin, take it or leave it, but where Mark is talking about Finals Club and his girlfriend isn't, but they are both talking about Finals Club, but Mark is talking about like the prestige and the access to like running the world, basically. Like it's a gateway, and she's talking about it as if it's a you know, a part of the academic institution of college, and that's what ends up leading to the conflict, right? I think in this scene, a similar kind of thread you could kind of find, which is that Karen knows he's not saying something, and Matt knows that Karen knows that. But the thing that he's not saying, you could position it as different for each of them. For Matt, the thing he's not saying is that his ex-girlfriend is back alive. And for Karen, it's the thing that he's not saying is that he's back in the Daredevil suit. And because they have this romantic relationship, you could have that be the point they're dancing around, where Matt is trying to deflect from the fact that he's got these complicated feelings about Elektra while standing in a room with Karen, the woman he is supposed to end up with. And then Karen is sort of tiptoeing around the fact that she knows that he's thinking about going back out there again. And that's where you have your conflict derived from.
Yeah. I like that. The only thing, though, is that you'd have to commit to that. You'd have to continue it over the next few episodes. I don't think they do. From what I remember, I don't think there's much. We don't get much more of Matt and Karen in this story.
No, they just put her in the police precinct.
Yeah, pretty much. Which I do like that scene in the precinct. I like seeing the characters from Jessica Jones.
That was kind of awesome,
Daredevil.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Just all hanging out and being like, who is that person? And us being like, I know who that person is.
I wish they talked.
I know.
I feel like Trish and Karen have a lot of things in common. Like they could have some interesting dialogue.
They almost set that up where Trish like looks at Karen and she's like, who's that? What's that reporter doing here?
Yeah.
And I like the fact that, and that's also a really interesting conversation, because when she asks that question, how does Karen respond? I'm Matt's maybe possibly girlfriend, but I don't know if Matt's Daredevil, so I don't know what I'm supposed to say here. Like, that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
That just isn't had. Yeah, and then Colleen gets her sword back, which is nice, I guess. Wait, hang on. But there's an interstitial scene before that, which is Jessica obviously heads out to go get Trish. And Trish is sort of being like, I want my show to be more serious or whatever, have a big important lunch. And they try and escape, and then Murakami turns up, and just, while Jessica's on the ropes, Daredevil shows up, and they kick this dude's ass like instantly. It's sick. They just go down. They just go fucking off chops, mate. Like, it's great. It's good stuff. Very, very cool. And one of the best lines of dialogue, I don't know if you wrote this down, but Jessica says, "The scarf worked better. Nice ears." And Matt says, "They're horns." It's great.
Yeah. See, this is why we need a show with them together.
Oh, mate, it'd be great.
Only Jessica can rip on Matt in that way.
It's something about that dynamic only works for them.
And it's also, when Daredevil shows up and then Trish is like, "Oh, no way." It's like the devil of Hell's Kitchen. I feel like, because in one of the later, I think it's season 3 of Jessica Jones, it's a lot of it is about like Trish. Well, it's about her, kind of spoilers. It's about her getting superpowers because she feels like, she's very insecure, and she feels like, she wants to feel powerful and stuff like that. And obviously, like, this is pretty far back from that. But the fact that, like, Trish is, like, just being, like, led around by, like, all these superheroes and stuff, it's kind of interesting in retrospect. Yeah.
Actually, I hadn't really thought about that, but it also does add to this other element of a character, which I really, really like, which is Trish is someone who, like, unflinchingly, like, will do the right thing until it becomes the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And, like, that's just true of every single thing in her life. Like, her relationship with Jessica is the right thing to do until it consistently becomes the wrong thing to do. Her relationship with the dude that's super, like, toxic is, like, the right thing to do until it's the complete wrong thing. Like, she just never stops the thing. And I think there's something really, you could do some really interesting stuff here. Again, in a show that spent more time at the front setting stuff up individually, I think you could have some really interesting payoffs here for those setups, right? You could have a little mini arc for Trish, where she might insist, I'm not going sitting in a precinct. There's a fucking story here. Like, I'm chasing the story. And then put herself in danger and have to realize, oh shit, I am not superpowered. This is not something I'm equipped to deal with.
And have Karen tag along. Have them work together.
Pat, it's right there.
Oh,
and you could
that would actually be so cool.
What's
and you could have some some hilarious, like, dude bro interactions between what's the other friend's name of Jessica Jones, the
Malcolm,
ex-heroin addict?
Malcolm,
yeah. Malcolm and Foggy interactions. How cool would that be?
That'd be sick. Can we? Yeah, give me a full, like, B arc of the pairings of the friends of the superheroes. Right. That would be amazing. Yeah. Instead, we don't get any of that. Disappointing. Anyway, it's a fun little fight scene, and it's cool to see them work together. This is the first time and the last time we will see Daredevil use all of his little gadgets and gizmos and pips and bobbins and gubbins and stuff. Obviously, they wisely move away from this in the next season of Daredevil, but it is cool that he's, like, it kind of brings him up to a level with some of these crazy powered folk. He's got the gadgets. We then get a pretty, honestly, and this is a testament to, obviously it helps that they're two absolutely phenomenal actors, but a fairly, like, heartbreaking moment where Colleen and Claire kind of finally talk, and Colleen kind of, like, stutteringly tries to explain, like, how fucked up she feels about the fact that she misses the stability of the hand, like, this foundation that she had, and, like, seeing Bakudo again just, like, drenched all that up. And Claire is kind of like, Claire correctly is like, hey, like, you, like, the reason that you feel like you miss it is because you haven't realized that you're the foundation for all of this. Like, you are everyone's foundation here, which is, like, true of the Defenders. Like, they would be kind of fucked without Colleen. Just as, like, a a part of the crew, and as the kind of, she manages to split the differentials between all of them and be quite pragmatic about everything. But the acting is so, like, I mean, obviously Rosario Dawson's a fucking genius. But yeah, it's a really like well-paced, well-written, well-acted scene that is like believable. And like, I got a bit misty-eyed. I got a little bit teary. I was like, shit, like, this is some real shit, you know?
Yeah, I like what you're saying about Rosario Dawson, because yeah, I don't know, she has this ability to like bring a very some raw emotions to all these shows, which is probably why they wisely put her in all of these. But I don't know. Wait, have you watched the second season of Luke Cage?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, dude, she does some heavy lifting in that season. Like yeah, I don't know. I just I just want to gush about Rosario Dawson. She's so good.
She's great. I mean, yeah, it's I always think back that it's so unfortunate that like so many people know her from that terrible Rent film adaptation of the musical. Like, she's just good in literally everything she's ever done. She's even good in that, which is a fucking terrible adaptation. Like, the other thing I quite like about this scene too is it's difficult in this type of show to have characters lack self-confidence because they are all superheroes in a certain capacity, right? Like, Luke Cage never lacks confidence. His whole deal is like he doesn't want to do violence, but he is forced to by the position that he's put in. Danny needs to learn to grow up. Jessica, I don't know, needs to learn how to be vulnerable. And Matt has to accept who he is, which is Daredevil and the leader of these people. But it's like, none of those characters really like fit with this question of like what the hand is capable of doing, which is like completely rewriting your history and your life and your perception of reality. And Colleen is like the only person who can slot in and show us the personal, like the interpersonal consequences of this organization. It's not just that they are, you know, ninjas that can kill people. They can like unmake your life. Like they can rob your sense of self, or like they can take away years of a potential life you could have had as a fully formed person. And I think that's I think that's why this works for me really well, is it shows some other aspect of what makes these guys, evil from our perspective, right? It's good stuff.
I mean, that's where a lot of the darkness comes from in Daredevil. Like, just how, villains at a level of in society where like they have just so much power and like in politics and bureaucracy, and just bury you, cut off your reliance and access to everything that society can offer you and stuff like that. Yeah,
just rob you of any recourse whatsoever.
Yeah,
it's great. It's a great scene. I'll probably just play the whole thing.
Maybe this is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
What do you mean?
Hidden here. Away from the action. Left behind. I don't even know anymore.
He was wrong back there about your being weak.
When you're raised in something like that, when they form the foundation for who you are, breaking away is like I feel lost. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but all I want is something stable. Something I can hold on to.
Funny you should say that. Because I know you. I know Danny. I know this fight with the hand. And where I'm standing, you are the foundation.
Daredevil then interrogates Sawande and pretty much almost kills him on the spot. You can kind of feel Matt, like, yeah, he's playing into it, but also you can tell he's missed this shit almost the second he starts interrogating this guy. You can tell he's like, there's something about him that's into this. Again, they play it up a little too much, but it works for me here.
He becomes an animal in the suit. Tell you what.
Yeah, he's a scary guy
to him. Yeah.
with a cool grapple hook thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of an inventive idea, actually, to use the grapple hook as a interrogation tool. Because we saw it in use where it shoots out and then he can push the button and it will sort of pull him towards it. It's clever to, I don't know, that's just a cool
some like garrote wire.
Yeah.
It's how they do it back in the Red State, baby.
That's whenever I interrogate cult leaders, I too use my grapple stick. That's good stuff. Somebody's not saying shit. Everyone else is a little worried about Matt. They have not seen this side of him before. And it really does, I don't know, I think it really interestingly does set up what makes Matt different from everybody else, which is like, yeah, he has this side that none of these characters have. No one else in this show is gonna like enjoy torturing someone, right? Or at least in some capacity have a part of themselves that is fulfilled by torturing somebody, but Matt does. And I think it kind of freaks everyone out a little bit, which is super. It's good characterization for everyone involved in the scene. It's great. Then this is again a really annoying thing that happens is instead of us resolving this scene, we cut to Alexandra talking to the rest of the hand, and then we cut back and Sawande like tries to escape. He gets a knife on Danny, and then Stick just like beheads him. But like this is the thing that really annoys me is we didn't need to cut away. We could have resolved the scene with Stick killing Sawande, and then you cut like the parallelism at a structural level is he gets murdered and you cut back to the hand and Alexandra's like, no, trust me, my plan will work. Like we will get what we need. And like we know, like the dramatic irony is we just watch Sawande get fucking killed. So like we know that her argument isn't going to hold water because we like it just.
Well, what actually happens?
So what happens is Daredevil's interrogating Sawande, right? And he almost kills him, and then his chair gets knocked, so he's lying facing the ceiling. Then it cuts to Alexandra trying to convince the others that, or they're confronting her, being like, maybe we need a fucking plan without you. Like maybe like you don't know what you're doing. Like maybe it's time for us to form a plan without the black sky or whatever. And then we cut back to the abandoned theater, where Sawande grabs Danny and then Stick beheads him.
Right.
And it just robs the hand scene of some dramatic flair it could have, which is like them saying, hey, what you're doing isn't working. And we know it isn't. And Alexandra's insisting it does. And it just loses. There's something there it could have had, which would have added to that, to the kind of thematic resonance of, and that's where, like, if you know that's how it's sequenced, like if you know Sawande just got killed, and then you have a scene that cuts directly and it's someone saying, hey, we're safe, don't worry about it. You can start to manipulate that dialogue specifically to get us thinking about the fact that, like, the rest of the hand are kind of right. Like, so far, the black sky hasn't been working. And we just don't get that. It's instead we just get, like, what I would call, like, typical TV editing, which is before a big, like, you just want to always keep your big things paced out evenly. So there's always something happening. Often at the expense of the pacing or the kind of, in this case, an opportunity for a really interesting back-to-back scene.
Right. And then this is where we could push our Murakami conflict further and juxtapose it with this scene. Yeah.
Especially
maybe,
if...
maybe even the last shot could be like a close-up of Murakami's like face after he just got like shot down by Alexandra. And then you could tell that it's a face of betrayal, you know, like...
And you could use his failed gambit with Colleen. Alexandra could use that to win the argument. She could be like,
right, yeah.
You know, he's saying, it's not working out. We should form a plan. And she's like, so you form plans now. I thought you just went out and did whatever you felt, whatever you wanted to, whenever you felt like it. How did you go last night, huh? Like, and then you could like that, and that's the tension. She can use it to, like, she wins the argument, but like rhetorically is like she wins the argument, but is still wrong. And that's really good character work there, where she doesn't have the grace to realize that just because he failed, like dirt on someone else's hands doesn't wash your own, right? Like someone else's failure isn't your victory.
Maybe in that scene you could play up Murakami's camaraderie with the other members of the hand, like, you know, those are the people he actually cares for, and then you match cut Sawande's head on the ground with Murakami's head.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's genius. It's genius stuff. Yeah, and also we know that's true just at like a purely expositional level, because Alexandra and Murakami haven't spoken in like 100 years. Like maybe Sawande was his homie. Like maybe that was the boy.
Right.
And
yeah, exactly.
And he's
don't
like,
they even like imply that like Murakami is actually kind of tight with the other members? Yeah.
Well, he's the one they will go to for everything, and Alexandra's kind of like the aloof leader. It's just, man, like that'd be so good, because then what you're setting up too is, in order to get it done, Murakami has to embrace the violence that he's constantly keeping at bay. So he has to like give in to the thing that makes him fucking evil in order to get the mission done. But if he does that, then he's basically like giving Alexandra ammunition to prove she was right. And that's that beautiful like tension between your villains, right? Where it's like, well, yeah, like if he wants to get it done and fulfill this goal that they have laid out for themselves, he has to do the thing that makes him an unsuitable leader, while trying to convince the others that he's leading with that as a plan. And like that's the contradiction is delicious. You know, you place him in this inescapable position, right? It's the best of bad choices. Do I follow Alexandra, who has a plan I disagree with that isn't working? Or do I prove her right and risk any support I have in order to get it done?
We're making him into like, we're replacing Elektra with him pretty much in our version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could be a really interesting character, I feel.
Well, and you could make him have more of a relationship with Daredevil as well, since Daredevil was the one who killed his former employee, you know?
And
maybe
also
he could try to recruit Daredevil.
Yeah. Daredevil also just beat him in a fist fight. So like,
true.
He's got to be feeling a type of way about that.
Yeah.
Damn. Oh, and then you could have him fucking hunt Daredevil and Colleen. Like that could become his fucking raison d'etre. Oh, so many options. Show doesn't do any of them. That's fine. Okay, well, let's wrap this episode up. So Elektra goes to Matt's place, and there's a detail that I wrote down that I don't know if you noticed either. Very deliberately, all of the pictures in Matt's apartment are hung askew. Has that ever been the case before?
I
don't think it has.
Are those pictures in his kitchen? Like,
no, as you look into his bedroom, there's one on the wall hanging like this, and then there's one in the bedroom hanging like slightly at a different angle. And I don't think that we've ever seen that before. It's weird.
Well, his whole apartment's a mess, so isn't that sort of why?
Why is his apartment a mess? Do we remember?
It's like, I don't know. Well, it's because he moved out of the office, as we find out in the next episode.
Yeah.
And so he's got like a lot of stuff everywhere. But
yeah, but I'm just
I don't know if there's been like a fight or something.
That's what I was thinking. Like, did ninjas? Oh, was it the earthquake? He never cleaned up after the earthquake.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Jesus, I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting for this show. And it's unclear, but Elektra basically curls up in Matt's bed and seems to be thinking and remembering and stuff.
Yeah, she's doing a big sniff.
She's doing a big sniff. It's a lot. Okay, I want to end this discussion with a minor complaint I have. If we weren't doing this show and I wasn't constantly taking notes, I would not know who the fuck any of the Hand are. Like, just the names of these main villains. I would not remember them.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't say them enough, like, in the show. Like, I had to look up Sawande's name for this episode. Because, I was like, well, I just thought of him as, like, the white hat guy. It's just a weird... I don't know. Just seems odd. Especially if they're that important.
Yeah, well, they're not.
Yeah, and I only know Bakuto because he was in fucking Iron Fist.
Yeah. There's too many of them. There's too many villains. And
that's why
not enough episodes.
That's why not bringing Bakuto back gets you more like, you know, like it's all the decisions like are bad. How many? I mean, because the Hand is 5. So here's another way you could solve this, right? If the Hand is 5 leaders, why don't you just have it be 4? Well, because we know it's 4 because we know Bakuto's dead. So why not have it be 3? And have the final member of the Hand be like a spiritual placeholder seat for the Black Sky. So there's 3 members of the Hand currently alive and operating. There's a leader and then two subordinates. There used to be 3 subordinates. And then the 4th seat is the Black Sky, you know, the true leader of the Hand yet to surface or whatever. And that would kind of solve... Like, you could just start to cut down the numbers immediately and also get into some interesting, like, cult conceptual stuff where it's like the leader, not for nothing, Pat, but a lot of religions happen to be based on, like, a leader who was once around coming back and shit. So, like, you already got the inroad for it.
You're saying, like, the Black Sky could be like the sage from Assassin's Creed, just like...
Yeah.
Same person reincarnated, yeah.
Yeah, or you position it as like a Christ figure, right? Where it's like, well, that's the savior, that's the homie. Because and that's the thing, like, you know, even something like the Jesus myth, it's very simple. And I think part of the issue that that this show is having with the Hand is it's very it's not that it's complicated, it's that it's very contrived because they have to keep re-explaining new stuff to try and like make sure that you're keeping up. Where it's like, you know, in one of the earlier episodes when Danny and Colleen are in that sword workshop, and there's a picture of Kunlun on the wall, and the characters say twice, "Hey, that's Kunlun." And when we were recording, you were like, "Wait, that was Kunlun?" Like they you know, it's not doing an effective job of putting these things out there and doing adequate reminders before they become relevant again. What ends up happening is they say something once, it becomes relevant again, and in the same scene, someone re-explains it to you, which doesn't have the same effect as setup, reminder, payoff. And it's just a pretty consistent thing that's happening in the show. And I think you're right. You need less members of the Hand, and you need them to be... I mean, yeah, Alexander needs to be more distinct, and Madame Gao needs more to do, I think, as well.
Okay, here's my pitch. Keep the 5 fingers of the Hand, but like, just not have any of them except for one in the show. And expand the scope of the Hand. Like, you know, just pretend like they're actually in their home continents. Doing much more important stuff, and just this one member of the Hand has this mission that they're doing locally. Much more concentrated. You know, makes it believable that the Hand is a shadow organization running the world, kind of thing. And don't have Bakuto and Madame Gao be the fingers of the Hand. Have them be like just like lackeys. Yeah, that works. Oh,
and then that also implies such a bigger scope.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's so much better.
Yeah.
God. Okay.
It kind of just it doesn't change anything as well. Like it, it's just
It doesn't have to change anything at a plot level, but it
like you could have all the heroes do the same things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to try and like nail down in storytelling because never one specific thing, but I think the show increasingly is having this issue where it hasn't considered the sum of its parts. It's just all individual elements trying to achieve the thing in front of it, and there's not been there's no that reflexive work to go, okay, well we know that that's happening in episode 6, so let's think about how we can position ourselves to be ready for that at a plot, theme, character level. None of that. It's just like it's all sort of happening. It honestly feels like, and this could be the case, it feels like they're writing it as they go, like which is possible. They could have taken the story outline and gone, we'll figure it out as we shoot. It's entirely possible.
The writers stressing on their 6th can of Red Bull the night before they have to shoot. All of them are together in a room like, fuck, we gotta put something together.
Okay, so Elektra and Luke and Jessica Jones are mixing it up, and they need to say something. What should they say? Well, you know,
just put anything there. We'll figure it out later.
Just write like I don't know, like Luke says something like oh man, she's a pest, and then just Jessica, just have Jessica agree with him. We'll fix it later. We'll fix it. We'll fix it tomorrow.
We'll have them say the lines on the day, and we'll see how we feel about it, and we'll come up with something once we hear them say it.
Yeah, we can do it on the spot. It's and maybe the actors will come up with some ideas. It's quips. They'll we'll figure it out.
Just have fun with it.
Yeah, just have fun with it. It really does feel that way. It's unfortunate. Okay, do you have anything else on episode 5?
No.
Okay, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to talk about episode 6. Enjoy these products and or services. We'll be right back. This season of Daredevil in the Details is brought to you by the Maynard Trigg series. These are my Dying Earth science fantasy steampunk coming of age novels. The 3rd book is out now. You can grab the first book, Maynard Trigg and the Creature Beneath the Veil, hardback or paperback. It's on special right now at UnderInk.Press. Appreciate any support you guys give. These books are one of my favorite things I've ever done. I'm super proud of them, and I would love you guys to check it out. If you're interested in the stuff we do, I guarantee you'll enjoy these books. Head to UnderInk.Press and grab your copy today. I severely underestimated how much milk I had left, so I'm going to be drinking the world's strongest coffee, I think.
Nice.
Yeah. There's like, it's like, this is the mug, and it's like maybe 90% coffee, 10% milk. We're talking about episode 6, Ashes. Written by Drew Goddard and Marco Ramirez. Directed by Felix Enrique Alcala.
Written by Drew Goddard.
Yeah.
He hasn't written the episode in The Defenders so far.
He was Daredevil season 2, right? Primarily?
Yeah, but he's also he's the guy. Like he's the sort of the big name guy in Daredevil. Yeah,
it's true. Yeah,
he directed Cabin in the Woods.
And look, you know what? He's good too.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So you gotta wonder, like, because I was thinking about this with the other, with like Petrie and Ramirez, who are like the showrunners, right? You gotta wonder, like, is he getting a writing credit here because they used some of his original ideas, or did he actually step in and write the episode?
I think it's the former.
Like, because maybe this was like a script because this all could have been Daredevil season 3, right?
Right.
Like, I don't know. We're speculating, but that seems entirely plausible to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Okay, Pat, let's hear the summary, and then let's get into it. I want to say, we were ungenerous to episode 5. This is what the show really does. It makes some choices here. Yeah, let's do it. We'll talk it through.
All right. Realizing the Iron Fist is the key to the Hand's plan, Matt and the gang want to sideline Danny to prevent him from doing something stupid. Danny tries to fight the others, but they paste him and knock him unconscious. Elsewhere, Elektra sneaks into Matt's apartment and curls up in his bed, recalls or fantasizes about a perfect morning on Matt's couch. Luke and Stick keep an eye on a tied-up Danny while Matt and Jessica head off to investigate Raymond. once again realizing Midland Circle is suspicious, and once again realizing the hole under the building might be relevant. This double beat is followed by speaking to Raymond's daughter and the discovery of blueprints for something at the bottom of the hole. Does this mean our heroes thought the hole wasn't going to something, or are they plausibly that stupid? Not questions the summary can satisfy. Stick realizes there's a third option and attempts to kill Danny Rand, but not before Elektra turns up. Matt and Jessica arrive seconds too late as Elektra murders Stick and seems to remember Matt. Murakami prepares to challenge Alexandra for her leadership and her life when Elektra returns, dragging an unconscious Danny Rand with her. The kid cannot get through an episode without being knocked out. As Alexandra gloats to the others, Elektra runs her through. Soaked in the blood of a resurrector, Elektra claims leadership of the hand.
You can't even tell I didn't like this episode. The summary is so non-biased.
Not an ounce of sarcasm in that summary.
No. It's fucking crazy, pal. Like, they realize that Midland Circle is important. That Elektra
I was
remembers
so
Matt.
confused
Like,
about that.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Like, that. Also, there's a thing about, like, there's some conflict where Jessica's like, why didn't you tell us about that you knew about Midland Circle to Matt? And he's, like, keeping it a secret for some reason. Like, what?
Which is the same beat as him admitting that he knows Elektra.
Right, yeah.
It's just, this episode is just, it's the episode of double beats. It's fucking wild. I have a list of them at the end, which we'll talk about.
All right.
Let's start with something nice. I like Alexandra listening to her gramophone, and just sort of sitting and thinking. They finally give her some acting to do.
Yeah.
And like the way that she's concerned for the record in this like authentic kind of longing way is such good characterization that we've never seen from her before. Like it's the first moment of like real vulnerability, I feel.
You know what? This scene kind of reminded me of like an opening to like a Breaking Bad episode or something like that. Like the macro, or they're not quite macro shots, but the very, you know, short, I guess long lens, very close up shots of like, you know, certain objects that are in the mise en scène, and like the slow kind of almost like banal actions that the characters are doing just about the objects and their surroundings and stuff like that. The only difference is in a Breaking Bad episode that would lead to something, that this would be a sequence and it would end on something very, very important, whereas here it just like there's what you've described is all there is to it.
If this were Breaking Bad, the episode would explain how the record got scratched.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
It's really good, and they do nothing with it. It's a real shame. But you know, I still enjoyed it. It's better than some of the scenes we've had so far. Okay. Then we get the kind of discussion that the Iron Fist can seal and open certain things. So it's like both a lock and a key, which is like, we haven't really heard that before, have we?
I don't think so.
We just know that there's some key that needs to be open. There's been no suggestion that it was also created by the Iron Fist.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like in the comics, let me quickly Google this. Iron Fist powers. I feel like in the comics it does a bunch of other shit. Like it's not just doing big punches.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he just chooses to channel his chi into fist and punch things. Yeah.
Okay.
But like chi is just like an overall like
it's just a
force.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, it sounds like it can obviously makes his fist super powerful and amplify its force. It also makes his fist immune to pain, which makes sense, and injury. He can also use it to fire destructive blasts. Oh my god, do a little chi blast.
Can't he also do a force heal with it?
Yeah, Iron Fist also possesses healing abilities that allow him to recover from any injury or illness, as well as cure others.
Yeah.
And at times has even absorbed energy, attacking him and use it to power himself. So yeah, it does do some other stuff, but it does feel like I don't know. It just I keep going. He's the immortal Iron Fist. He's the living weapon. it would be cool to see that mean more than just glowy, punchy fist. And it just never really does. Even the healing in season 2 or whatever. But yeah. I don't know. Don't work for me. We then get such a good scene. So this is like they're having this discussion after Stickers killed Sawande. And like everybody individually in the room begins to realize that Danny is the weak link and is probably going to do something stupid that's going to give the bad guys what they want. Mm-hmm. And everyone is realizing it one by one. And the camera is just like slowly moving around the room as Danny starts to realize everyone's realizing. Mm-hmm. And he's just constantly like, you guys, like, you can't fucking bench me. Like, this is my fight too. And everyone's like, kid, just relax. Like, calm down. And then we get the most fucking fanfic line of all time where Matt says, you just need to calm down. And Danny says, that's the problem, Matt. I'm all out of calm.
Is that supposed to be like a reversal of the Avengers line?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because you know that Hulk line, like, what's your secret? How do you stay calm? And then he goes, well, that's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry.
I'm always angry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. To actually, that's a really good point. I've written down here, Danny speaks like how he thinks cool guys would speak, and it really does lean into that kind of like sort of ignorant, bratish kid that we've been talking about as a characterization.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people don't talk like, no one talks like Danny Rand. He's trying to be someone who isn't real.
Yeah. Which
works really well. It just is getting annoying at this point because it's been however many episodes. And I think, you know, I think you feel as doubly like this kind of sense that he isn't really thinking or properly, or he's like this arrogant kid, or he doesn't really understand what's going on. Because like almost immediately, Matt has his number. Like when they start fist fighting and mixing it up, Matt kind of has an answer to everything that he's got. And like Danny's supposed to be like, you know, the world's best martial artist or best whatever. And like he ends up relying on the Iron Fist the second he starts losing a fight. And like I think part of the interesting thing with this scene is like it really demonstrates the thing that Danny needs to do, which is like if he has to rely on the Iron Fist, then he isn't the immortal Iron Fist. He's just a kid who has powers.
Mm-hmm.
Like he hasn't sort of. I just think it's a cool, like, you get it in the dialogue and then you get it in the choreography. Like it's a good and really clearly communicated idea.
Yeah. And then him and Daredevil square off, but then the others get involved, which I kind of think is like, it's a bit messy. I think it should have been a fight between him and Matt, and then, you know, he loses. He tries to use the fist,
and that's when Luke intervenes.
Yeah, and then that's when like you could have a shot of him going to swing the fist, and then Jessica or Luke like grabs his arm, stops him from swinging the fist, and then like chokes him out or something. But
maybe both of them come up behind him and pin him.
Yeah. You could have like a, you know, like something akin to how they trap Thanos in Endgame, or no, in Infinity War, where all the heroes work together.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like it. Yeah. I guess your point there is like if they wait till he does that to intervene, it's them basically stepping in when he does the wrong thing. Like
right. Yeah. Exactly.
The fist fight there is Matt subduing him. But the second that Danny uses the fist, they're like, whoa. Like same team, dude. Like, what are you fucking doing? You're gonna kill the guy.
Yeah, and it gives them more justification as to why they should need to incapacitate him. Yeah.
Plus, I like your idea there of them doing it handily, like literally 2 actions. They could have him pinned and disarmed or whatever. Again, just really communicating like he just don't got it like they do. I think that could be
right.
Really again. I think it tightens that up really nicely.
Yeah. Everyone's just trying to kind of like de-escalate the situation, except for Danny, who is petulant and like, yeah.
That's a really good point, and I love the idea that would only make him more frustrated, which is that like they were letting him do his punches.
Yeah.
Like they, you know, letting him punch it out like a kid or whatever. And it, like that's so good. And then that gives you really, really good leverage later for Luke to try and explain to him that he misunderstands why they treat him the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's like, I'm the Mortal Iron Fist, I did a big dragon. And Luke being like, you don't fucking, like, it's not about your powers or your kung fu or your training or your chi or whatever. Like, you're a part of a team and you don't seem to realize that. You just think that, like, you're the most important person in every room. Well, let me goddamn tell you, buddy, there's a lot more to life than you think there is. And that's where you get that really nice friction where he's literally tied to a chair and would have to listen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you could also demonstrate Luke's like emotional intelligence, and have pretty much the same situation where he allows Danny to explain, how he got the fist, and then Luke just like tentatively listens. He hears him out. After or before explaining what you were just saying. Yeah.
You could also have him counter. Now it's just us pitching better ideas for a show, but you could have him counter, like, let Danny finish his story, and then Luke could quietly start telling the story of how, like, as a kid he first wound up in prison or something, or like tell some story about the real world that actually matters, or about how Jessica saved his life or something, or how she saved him from himself or whatever, or from doing something horrible, like, because he kind of does, where he's like, oh, me and Jessica mixed it up one time, but like you have that be position as like, yeah, I get it, like, you had all this training, you had these people that you lost, but like, we're here now and like we're on your team, and you can't seem to get that. Like, you need to shut up for a minute and just listen to us. Like, we know what we're doing, we're looking out for you. And really have that land more than what we get here, which is very messy. We've got sort of this interstitial scene with Elektra. So Elektra she seems to remember that she was in love with Matt, because she sort of, I can't remember how I got to this, but I think this is where she opens up the funeral book,
right,
and takes out the prayer or something.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a Bible.
I mean, it might be. I just assumed it was like, actually, Bible makes way more sense. Yeah, it probably was a Bible. I don't know. I think I thought it was like a book from the funeral, like, of the, you're right. It's definitely a Bible. Yeah. Anyway, we obviously intuit this isn't going to go well for anybody, this realization. We then go back to the hand, and Madame Gao has kind of done a 180, and she's now back on board with Alexandra, which feels so out of place, because in the last episode they were like, we need to make a plan without you. And now Gao is like, no, we definitely, she's right, we shouldn't betray her. And like, it's weird, because you'd think that, because what happens is they learn of Sawande's death, and this has Gao double down on backing Alexandra's plan. But you'd think, like we were talking about in our last discussion, you'd think that losing a member of the hand would like create more tension and galvanize them to turn on each other, instead of this weird, like, no, like, we need to keep working together. Like, it takes what should be a moment that could trigger more tension and just does the opposite.
But as soon as she leaves Alexandra's room, doesn't she like pass Murakami on the way and say like, oh, you were right, or something like that? It sort of implies that she wasn't actually sincere in like what she said to Alexandra. Wasn't that the case?
That could be true. I don't recall that. If that's true, that kind of works a little bit better for me. But
right.
I guess that would make sense, because then at the end of this episode, Murakami is going to try and take Alexandra out, right?
Yeah. So I think it was setting up for that. She was scouting what Alexandra was really sort of, thinking, and what her plans were. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I that's on me then. I still think didn't love it, but that is a little bit better than what I thought it was. Yeah. Okay. Then we get one of my favorite scenes in this show, which is, Danny's tied up, and Luke and Danny have their little exchange, which, like we said, could be more interesting. But yeah, Danny, I've written down here, Danny Rand tries to tell the most practical man on the planet about chakras and dragons. And Luke's just like not having a bar of it. We get
again, like some awful dialogue, just like, again, placeholder stuff. We'll fix it later.
Shit.
Yeah.
100%. We get a line that I would like on a t-shirt and also to be on my gravestone, which is I'd face a dragon over Jessica Jones any day. What are you guys doing? I'd face a dragon over Jessica. Like, did you read it on the page before you said it? Before you told the actor to memorize that script? Like, what are you doing? Ugh. Anyway,
it's pretty bad.
It's just cheesy and like dumb, and like Jessica is consistently positioned in this show as like someone that everyone is like a little bit afraid of, but in like a jokey kind of way. And they both do that too much and don't do anything with it. Like I think if you're gonna have that be everyone's view of her, you need to make that everyone's view of her and then do something with it.
I kind of feel like it's also a bit patronizing because she's the one that doesn't really have anything super special in terms of like powers about her. And the show keeps trying to justify her place in this team. And so having her be like this the scary one is trying to force that into their dynamic is the show trying to lift her up a bit, which is
a shame because it doesn't need to, because she's an incredible PI throughout this show, as we're about to see in the next scene. Like they wouldn't be able to fucking find anything without her. And like that's just like true. But yeah, you're right. The show, like Condescending's right. It positions her as like, oh, she'll do a big punch on you. It's like, come on, she's smart, bro. Like
yeah. You
That's...
don't need to sell us on her. We've seen her show. Like she's great. Like
So yeah, she's an excellent character. You don't need to keep convincing me that she belongs here. If anyone needs convincing to belong here, it's fucking Danny Rand. Like, stupid. Yeah, it's not it's has the potential to be a great scene. It simply isn't. Okay, yeah. Then Jessica and Mac go to see Raymond's daughter again, and she's really struggling. She sort of says he left even before he took his own life. He was distant, he stopped eating, he seemed really stressed all the time. Jessica, in an effort to make, I think the kid's name is Alexi, but then I don't know if I've remembered that because Alexander is the name of the villain, but I'm pretty sure it was Alexi. Anyway, in an effort to make the kid feel better, Jessica sort of tells the story of her friend, whose dad was like a big-time boxer, and she sort of like recounts the story of battling Jack that leads to Matt, where Matt thinks that this guy, that his dad was like horrible and like, went out there and died for no reason. But then it turns out that he was actually protecting his kid from the mob and trying to set him up. It's a cool little note because as it's happening, you kind of go, you kind of, in your head, you're like, she's figured this out by herself, right? And we obviously get that confirmation later. But it's a very good little bit of characterization between them where, like we were saying, Jessica Jones is so much more than just like does big punches, drinks alcohol. She really has this this really incisive mind and this kind of understanding of people. The reason that she puts this together is she's like, well, why else would a guy go out and beat up on bad guys? Like, and to the extent that you do, like, of course, like that makes sense.
Which is, like, it's that sort of relationship is something that I want to explore in my pitch, because it's such good tension of Matt, who's so naturally secretive, and versus Jessica, who's inquisitive and can just like pull information out of thin air. But she actually works hard to get it, but you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, I think that it would have been cool if the show lent into that more. Like if she suddenly had all this information on like Danny Rand as well, that she just like sourced from somewhere, you know, like that, and she has all this leverage against like all the other people.
Yeah. I mean, I do really like the idea of like a season of Daredevil where it's like, you know, the most secretive man in the world and the human can opener, right? Like, and them as a duo trying to solve something. It could lead to some really, because the other thing about Jessica Jones being a human can opener, as you kind of see in her show, is she, in order to do that, she has to kind of develop a barrier between herself and the rest of reality in order to make her, in order to free herself up to be that incisive. Every interaction is not an interaction, it's an opportunity to learn information that can be connected to other information. And you know, that inability to be vulnerable is the very reason why she obviously drinks, is to help compensate for the fact that like she is alone in a way that is so spiritually complete. Like it's not the same thing as being lonely. It's like she has excised herself from humanity in order to become this other thing. And then I think Matt has done the same thing in order to become Daredevil. And I think there's some really good stuff there that can be that when you put that against each other and you create a problem, that kind of tension is like what really good stories are made of.
Right. I agree.
And especially because she's so rational and he has this religious thing that she can never understand.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all very good.
And you know, like I think it would be really interesting if you explored the victims of Daredevil through the eyes of Jessica Jones. Like, you know, maybe someone, one of the goons he punched up one time died of a brain hemorrhage, like, you know, like 16 hours after he was admitted to the hospital. Matt wouldn't know that, but Jessica would, you know. Yeah.
Oh man. Oh shit. That's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
And because what you would do is you would set it up such that Matt is really like sanctimonious about her drinking. And then as she kind of starts to look into exactly all that stuff and has some kind of reveal like that, she can reveal that like he's accidentally crossed his line, and then that could lead to him developing some kind of a substance problem.
Yeah.
And you could kind of like schematically maneuver them, and this is all very good stuff.
Well, if Matt's going to be sanctimonious about anything in regards to Jessica, it'd be that she took a life, right? And so that would be the perfect time for Jessica to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, just two friends really going at each other with the worst shit of all time. Stories are great. Write that show. In this scene, at any rate, Matt kind of like the Alexia reveals that like her dad doesn't really play the piano anymore. It was a big part of his life. He used to play it all the time, and so Matt, and then he says something like, you know, how long is it? You know, does he play the piano anymore? She's like, no, he hasn't in like a really long time. And so Matt kind of clues into something, which is like maybe there's something up with the piano. Whether he hears something on the piano because he's got super hearing or whatever, or he smells something, who knows? But he starts playing the piano, and they discover that the blueprints for Midland Circle are stashed inside the piano. Which again leads to the double beat of there's something under Midland Circle, which we already knew from Daredevil season 2, which we already knew from the start of this season.
Did you notice he was playing the Defenders theme on the piano as well?
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, that's funny.
It's so corny.
Guys, you gotta stop. Stop doing that shit. Oh, God. Anyway, it's a cool find. Little good little solve, good little teamwork with our guys. And yeah, they go, and this is where I was like, what the fuck? Are they, like, does the show think everyone in it is an idiot? Like, if the bad guys are digging a giant hole and then building a skyscraper on top of it, why did our guys think they were building a hole if not to get to something? Like, obviously they're trying to dig to something, not just digging a hole for the sake of it. And they've already said multiple times, Iron Fist is the key to some kind of door. Well, surely a bit of inductive reasoning would tell you that they're digging to get to the door to get to whatever's on the other side of it. But for some reason, this is a revelation.
Yeah, the way it left off in Daredevil was just it was a mystery, pretty much. It was just like, why are they digging a hole?
And what are they up to?
It's some nefarious stuff, and then that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like, you know, I guess, you know, it does. You are trying to get to somewhere that is the obvious answer, but like digging a really, really big hole is like, you know, it's kind of there's some mystery to that. Like, why make it so huge? You know.
But then have that be the things that they're talking about. Like, do you know, like, show me that in the show. Don't just like, I don't know. It just doesn't. It just feels like constantly re-revealing the same information slightly differently instead of progressing an investigation.
Yeah. For sure.
It's possible that I'm just annoyed at the show at this point, so I'm just seeing everything as a problem. But I did kind of go, all right, we kind of already knew that, but sure. Yeah. Maybe it's leaning into the old man yells at kids on lawn energy too much.
It reminds me of the Game of Thrones thing where they're interviewing the creators Dan and Dave, and then, you know, there's that famous clip of one of them going, "Oh, I guess Danny just forgot about the Iron Fleet," when they're trying to someone asked them about a plot point about like why she didn't, like, you know, consider them. Yeah, reminds me of that. Yeah. Guess Matt just forgot about the giant hole. What can I say?
But that what? But then we know he didn't, because Jessica's like, "Are you just remembering this now?" And he's like, "No, I just didn't. Elektra was there."
Yeah.
It's so dumb. Like, he could have just said, "I found a giant hole." No one would have said, "Who are you with?" Like, what? Fucking weird lies. Anyway, okay, so then they kind of race back. Stick is trying to kill Danny, which is very funny. I like that he's like, a third option, murder. Actually, really good character work for Stick.
Yeah, that's what he realized in his meditation. Yeah, I agree. Like, if there's anyone who this show has sort of embellished and worked for, it's Stick.
Yeah,
it's because the Hand hasn't really been that relevant in the two. Well, you know, I mean, obviously they're, you know, a big plot point in season 2, but like, Stick has always been the outlier in terms of like purpose in Daredevil, and now that the Hand is like the actual threat, you know, he's in his element, and all the stuff is being revealed about him. They should have done more with him in this show, I reckon. Like, yeah, and I like how, you know, he reveals to Luke that it's essentially his backstory. He was in prison for 10 years in his youth, and that's where he met the Chaste. Yeah, and he got a family. Yeah, a lot of that stuff is really cool.
It gives you such an interesting picture of him too, because it's like he was kind of indoctrinated in the same way that he Big Ben has been indoctrinating people, where it's like this moment in his life when he's vulnerable and has no other options, which is exactly the same thing that happened to Colleen, which is exactly the same thing that he did to Elektra, which is exactly the same thing that happened to Matt. And it's such an interesting idea, and then I get that he has to die. Like, I understand that is a thing that should probably happen in this season of television. I just wish they would have, I'm with you, done more with him before. Like, kill him later, I think.
I wish they would have dedicated more significance and more pathos to his decision to kill Danny Rand. Like, a pretty evil thing to do, really. And, you know, he's always been sort of this morally dubious character in Daredevil, but he hasn't. I mean, you know, he chose to send an assassin to Elektra, I suppose, but this is a lot more present and direct. Maybe Matt should have somehow been there and learned of Stick's decision to kill Danny or something like that. Like, you know, something to really shock him.
Or you have Stick incapacitate Luke in some way, and then you have Stick explain. You kind of have him do like a villain speech to Danny, being like, "This is why this is the right decision to make." And you show from his perspective why he's concluded this is the only option. You could sort of bring to bear his experience, like you said, like his experience and his backstory. And he could say, like, "Let me tell you what's going to happen, right? Eventually, Elektra's going to break in here. She's going to take you. Your friends are going to try and stop her, but they can't. She's the black sky, the ultimate weapon. And then what's going to happen is they're going to force you to open that door. And when they do, and like you could have him tell Danny, like, if I don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And then he could say something like, you know, it's not like I haven't done this before. You know, I'm the one willing to do what others won't. And that's where you kind of get into like that really good, like villain speech that is also a hero speech, because it's that character justifying their worldview. But even you watching it, you're like, this kind of makes sense. You could get into some of the pathos around like, I burn my life so that others are have safety, and they'll never understand. Like you get into that Andor space of like, what is this guy's, like, how does Stick view himself in the context of it? Because he's not talking about the war, talking about you're getting soft, whoever. But how does he view himself in this? Does he think of himself as like a martyr? Does he think of himself as like a general? Like, show us that through the lens of this decision. If he's a general, right, the speech should be like, every commander that's ever led an army into battle knows that, some of your troops aren't coming back. And sometimes you have to make the noble sacrifice or whatever. Like, you find whatever that is.
Actually, you know what? Here's what I would do. I would have a last conversation between him and Matt, where he comes up with some reason to get Matt away from there. And in that conversation, it's in there, subtextually, there's a goodbye to Matt, but also that speech, that Andor speech of what you're talking about, where he justifies what he's about to do in an indirect way. And you have all those things, beautifully written, ideally, in that conversation. And then that happens where he attempts to, kill Danny, but he gets killed himself by Elektra.
Yeah. Real missed opportunity. There is some stuff that's working well here. Elektra kills him in pretty spectacular fashion. She basically dispenses of everybody almost effortlessly.
She's got superpowers now, apparently, like super strength.
Yeah, that's new.
Yeah, right?
That happened and I was like, oh, what? Yeah. This is what we're doing? Okay. Yeah, she does have superpowers now. Then, so all of our guys arrive, and it's this weird little scrappy sequence where like they want to have Elektra kill Stick and grab. So she doesn't. She just knocks Matt out, and she's like, "Hi, Matthew," or whatever. Grabs Danny and then runs off, and we then cut back to Murakami. So it's Alexandra having dinner. And Murakami comes in and he's got a bottle of vintage something, some vintage
that he pulled
bubbly
from the bottom of the ocean.
Bottom of the ocean, somehow still got the bubbles in it. And it's this really weird little sequence where she kind of is playing into whatever's happening in this moment. She's clearly keyed into the fact that he wants to dust her up. And she kind of goes, hey, like, it's really brave of you to come here by yourself. And then as she says that and he's putting on his gloves, you kind of see, like, in the background of the shot, all of his goons start to arrive. It's great. And then, Elektra arrives and drags in Danny. And then they obviously go to the room with all the other guys in the hand. And Alexandra gives the most flavorless villain speech of all. I've never seen anything this bland in my entire life.
Yeah, I know.
The thing about war is that it only works if both sides think they're the good guys. What? That's not even placeholder dialogue. That's like a dot point about what the dialogue is going to be about. Where you're like, oh, yeah, we'll come and we'll fill that in later. Like, it's not even dialogue. It's like, this is where this is in the story outline where someone writes down, and then Alexandra gives a speech about how war only works if everyone thinks that they're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then
the delivery is like a conversation in like episode 2, like, while you're setting up the villain in a conversation with some other villain, like,
so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's mid-speech, and she's kind of gloating about, like, you know, I fucking did it. You got to have more faith, you know. And as she's doing her big bland speech, the scythes protrude from her chest, and then we cut, and Elektra basically stabs her with the two scythe knife things, and then cuts off Alexandra's head, which apparently, I think, is the only way to ensure that they stay dead. I think
it's consistent with how every other immortal person has died so far, so I suppose. Yeah,
exactly. And then she's basically like, you will work for me now, and his name is Matthew, because it's like, well, we don't know who the fucking DareDevil is or whatever. So she's in charge of the hand. I don't know why. Like, I don't know why she's done this. I don't know what she serves to gain from this. I don't understand why this makes sense for her character or the show.
And you'll love this. Overall, in terms of like the Defender shows, this is a triple beat. It happened in Luke Cage, midway through the season. They kill the main villain. Happens again in Iron Fist, and then it happens again in this show.
Well, and it's a triple beat in this show of Elektra betraying Alexandra. It's the third time she's done it. It's just this time she fucking followed through. Like, my God. Okay, do you have anything else about the episode, or shall I just go through my list of issues that I've written down?
No, let's do it.
Okay, so these are mostly structural complaints. Obviously, the one that I already highlighted is the characters relearning information for the first time multiple times. So the gang learns the Midland Circle is suspect. This is actually the plot of the Defenders, by the way. The gang learns Midland Circle is suspect. They head there to investigate. Then they escape the hand. They relearn that Midland Circle is important, head to investigate, and escape the hand. That's what's happened in the that's every episode up until now. That is literally what's happened. Parallel, this is probably more of a minor gripe, but the parallelism here is used to like push subtext as text instead of actually thinking about the ideas in the show. So kind of what I was saying there about like Alexandra being betrayed by Elektra multiple times. Instead of Elektra betraying Alexandra in this like climactic moment, in doing so revealing she remembers who she is, she attempts to betray Alexandra twice before this, and we already know that she remembers who she is. So instead of this being like a big jigsaw moment where suddenly all of Elektra's actions make sense to us, where we're like, oh, she remembered Matt the whole time, and she was always planning this. Instead, we already knew that, so it has no thematic impact. Like, this should be the moment where us as the viewer goes, oh, shit. Like, and then you recontextualize everything and you go, oh, that makes sense why she killed Stick, because she wants Matt to herself, or like you could kind of start to position like, but instead, like, we already knew because she turns up at Matt's flat or whatever. It's just, loses some of the impacts. The other thing that this does is robs the sequencing here of this potential like real get up and go, which is that in a moment when Matt loses Stick, his mentor, he could learn at the same time as he enters this grief, he could learn that Elektra remembers him, right? Like those two things could be in parallel, and that's like a really powerful in this moment of like, shit, well, I don't really have anyone else left in the world now. Like, he was my boy. There's no connections left to my past. Learning that Elektra's back, that could be a big draw for Matt to start doing the wrong thing even more, like try and get to Elektra, right? That gives him extra motivation and you know, only heightens the tragedy of what's happening, which they try and do, but it just, it doesn't, it's not here, I don't think. The last one is, this is more of a suggestion I had than anything. A big issue the show seems to be having is it doesn't know when to put certain scenes together back to back, and it doesn't really have a clear idea of like how to pace an episode, it seems like. And one of the suggestions that I quite liked, I was talking to some friends of mine about this, the Star Wars guys, and Rye was saying that George Lucas has this structural method he uses in the original Star Wars film, which is like the baton pass, where you start with a character and they meet a new character. And the next time we meet a new character, they are introduced by the most recent new character. So what you end up with is this really natural flow of events where it's like, you know, Luke's hanging out and then he meets the droids, and then the droids introduce him to this person, and then this person introduces him to, or, you know, like he meets Obi-Wan, who introduces him to this person, who introduces him to Han Solo, and like you just get this, who introduces him to Leia, like, and you get this flow of like different characters that feels like a natural progression. And you can even structure like episodes like that, right? It's like you start with Matt, who then passes the baton to Jessica, who passes it to Stick. And like you could try and find that rhythm where you sort of interweave the protagonist and the villain stories. And instead we kind of get like long scenes that are just cut up between other long scenes. Like you know, I was saying in the previous end of the episode, like when Sawande is killed, it's not two scenes. Like, it's one scene. They just cut it and put another scene in between. Like, you know, him falling over and then him getting beheaded. Like, they just cut it into two sequences for the sake of it. Like, there's no reason to do that. It doesn't add anything. And I think a big I think the show would be better if you simply recut it, let scenes finish, and then move on to other scenes, instead of this constant trying to make things bounce off each other, but because they don't actually have anything to do with each other, it just doesn't work. And I think that's like what I've identified as my core personal like taste issue with the show. Is I really like stories that go, here's a scene, the scene is over, now here's another scene that we've put next to it, and you can go, what impact does having that scene here and that scene here have on the way that we read both of them? And that just doesn't happen in this show because the scenes never quite finish. They're just sort of jumbled together.
You know what it feels like is like they didn't draw up any concept art or anything for this show. they didn't start at a point where they were like, what kind of like feeling like do we want this show to have? You know, what emotions do we want to draw? They, you know, it was just write a script pretty much. And that's, you know, that's why you have sequences cut together like that to sort of like fabricate some sort of dynamicism or, you know, rhythm or something like that, because it's actually devoid of any sort of vision.
Rhythm's a good way of putting it too, because it's trying to, it's like trying to artificially create rhythm by just cutting. Which is
doesn't have a spirit, man, you know.
Yeah, there's no big thing happening. There's no like, you don't look at it and go, the Defenders, a story about like there's just this big blank where you should have a bunch of adjectives that you can rattle off, like to try and like passionately pitch to someone why you should watch the show. Like there's like there is a thing that happens when you say to someone like, do you think I should watch Andor? And my brain goes, yeah, and then I explain to them passionately, like, this is why you should watch Andor, because it's a show about this stuff. And it's got nothing to do with Star Wars, obviously. And why should I watch Daredevil? And you go, oh, it's this brilliant, you know, exploration of this like guy who puts the weight of the world on his own shoulders, and it's this religious epic where it's all about like good and power and evil and control and faith and like anger and like, you know, where do you come from and what does it mean to like inherit your trauma and how do you treat people and what does lying do to the you tell people what it's about. You don't tell people what happens, right? But the Defenders, you're just left with this thing of like, you can tell someone what happens in the Defenders, but you can't tell them what the show is about.
Yeah.
And that's really indicative for me of exactly what you said, which is there's no underlying thing. It's sort of it kind of feels to me a bit like what ends up happening with a lot of kind of like shows that ride trends, where someone goes, well, this thing is like, vampires are big right now, we need to get in on that, just do a thing that has vampires, but then there's no thing at the core of it. And it's because they're trying to replicate someone that started with the core that happened to involve vampires. And I think this really feels like increasingly the issue, right, with franchises as a concept, or at least how economic incentives change what franchises end up being about, which is like this exists because they wanted to make a thing that connected all of these shows to promote the thing and all of these shows, instead of making a thing because someone had an idea for a thing. And you got to wonder if this was Daredevil season 3 or some other thing. It kind of makes sense. Like it explains itself why they fired the people that wrote the original drafts or the original ideas, because they would have said, no, we're not fucking, like, we should make the thing that we want to make. Like, and they've gone, no, it just needs to be an event. We just need an event where it all comes together because we can market that shit. And it's a real shame, you know?
I hope that's not what the new show is, because it sounds like that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because the headlines I read were stuff like the writers, creators were let go because they wanted to make it too much like I don't know, they had too much of a singular vision is sort of like what I read, not
Yikes.
Literally, like, you know, how I interpreted it. Yeah.
Yikes.
Which is worrying as fuck. Like,
oh, isn't that what a story should be?
yeah, I know. And all of them were like, oh, you know, it was focusing too much on the lawyer side of things, not so much on the superhero side. I'm like, what? Sounds amazing.
This sounds great.
Yeah.
Damn it. Ugh, man. You know, I've been thinking about this a lot, right? Because I'm sort of in the, you know, book 3's functionally finished. I just need to go and do like stylistic edits. And like, so I've been doing all the continuity stuff, which is like you just read through the book and you go and you check your own like internal wiki and be like, would that character know X at this time? Or like, can I explain justifiably this part of this? You know, is this character lying? Is this accurate? And just making sure that like sequencing or things people have said in previous books carry through, all that shit. It's a lot of work, but like, it helps you kind of move all that stuff out of the way so that the story that you're trying to tell comes through. I've been trying to explain this in some detail over the last kind of 2 or 3 years as I've reoriented my focus when it comes to my media crit. And like, one of the things that I think is difficult to articulate is the reason why that stuff matters. So the reason why like sitting down and going like, what is Daredevil about? The reason why then getting the other stuff right. So like, you know, the continuity or like the characterization consistency or the character arcs and stuff, is it prevents barriers to that thing that you're trying to do happening, right? Like the fact that a show is self-consistent with its, you know, it's self-consistent with its own lore or like its own universe, that doesn't make something good. It just means that there's less things that can get in the way of the vision or the heart of it. Like that's why something for me like CinemaSins has no value to me as a person who thinks about stories and writes them, is like, I don't really care about like continuity errors. If the thing is doing and trying something that you can tell is interesting or interests you as a reader or as an audience member, getting that other stuff right just helps focus in on that and helps, you know, and hopefully as you're doing it, you're making those decisions to enhance the thing that you're trying to achieve, not because like making a small error in world building ruins a story or whatever. And I think that gets really tricky with stuff like the Defenders, and like you're saying with this prospective new Daredevil thing, where the only interest seems to be in it's all of the wrappings and the accoutrement that comes with like a shared set of stories, and they consistently seem to be in a position where they, and obviously this is why all the strikes you know are happening, is their kind of focus is, well, we obviously need to make money, right? The economic incentive becomes the only incentive, and then it's like, well, but then no one's gonna watch it if it's shit. And so then you've got the creative people, the artists, have to save you from yourself, as like a institution primarily motivated by economic incentives. And that's how you get something like the Defenders, which I would kill to see the original story outline that Goddard and Ramirez and the OG guys broke, because they had a writer's room. for whatever this was, and I'd love to see whatever that concept was and understand how we got from there to here, and like just what it was that we lost. Because I think there's something there. Like there must have been something at the heart of this, and they were like, no, don't do that. Just do the franchise thing.
Yeah,
it sucks, man.
While you were explaining that, the parallel sort of popped into my head. It's like I wonder if, like, because what they think audiences want is something akin to the marketing focus of like video games and stuff like that. How many frames per second can this game run? Does it have 4K textures? 'Cause, yeah, I'm thinking about like Starfield that just released. There was a really big focus on every object is like really detailed, and you can pick it up and move it around. It's a 3D model that you can touch and stuff like that. And it's like I feel like there's some sort of vague parallel there with what bigwigs at media studios think end consumers want, which is, yeah, as you said, like the wrappings and the frostings of media cake.
Yeah, I mean, like, and none of this is new, right? Like, I mean, Georges Borges, he had that famous essay where he talks about like a society that becomes obsessed with cartography, and at a certain point they keep trying to make the most detailed map of the region they can, and then what they realize is that the only detailed map of the region is the region itself, and so they set about trying to build a scale map of the region, and the empire crumbles because it's an impossible task, and that's the paradox at the heart of cartography and of like any grand venture, right? Like it's the mistaking the simulacra for a life-size model. Like stories, I say this all the time when I do the Star Wars podcast stuff with the other guys, but like characters aren't people. Characters exist in service as part of a function for a story, right? They're not people. Like you can't ruin a character because like it's not a person. Like you can't betray a character because it's not a person. Like characters exist in stories to do different things and to represent different things or to explore ideas or explore concepts and stuff. They're not real people. And I think part of the problem that, like you said, that we're seeing with this stuff is they seem to think that if they just make it look like this is a world where people exist and all of these things are in the same world and all these people exist in all of these stories, that's what people are after. Like it's like the idea that they're people that exist in the same universe instead of the truth, which is like people will like good stories, and it's kind of exciting if all of the good stories happen in the same space because then you can get cool crossover stuff. It's not cool because it crosses over.
Characters aren't real people, y'all. Just remember that.
That's the takeaway for this week. Characters aren't real people, y'all. Exactly. Okay, well, on that grim note, I think that'll do it for this episode. So next time we are talking about the Defenders, episode 7 and 8, the last two episodes, and then we'll be it'll be over. We can take a sleep for 1,000 years, and then do DareDevil season 3, which I'm fucking stoked for. I don't remember anything about that season, so that's exciting to me. That'll do it, Pat. Where can people find you on the internet? If they sitting there thinking to themselves, man, I'd love me some more Pat.
You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher at A Method to the Madness podcast. We have a website, amttm.com. You can follow all our socials from there.
Love it. And of course, if you like the work we do, obviously the best way to follow us is on YouTube. You can find our links to everything at ZeroIndent.com. You can support us on Patreon. You can go to UnderInk.Press to grab some merch. You can buy my books. I guarantee if you like this type of thing, you'll like my book on BBC Sherlock, Give Up After 3, which is a historical analysis of the lost final episode and kind of like the internet conspiracies that grew up around it. And it's kind of like a phenomenology of what it means to be a fan of something online and what it means to learn how stories work through some pretty heartbreaking different things that happen historically. So
heartbreaking for the people involved for sure.
Yeah. I feel bad. I don't know. Like whenever I was reading through those Tumblr blogs, I just remember like you see them so passionate about, like so passionately wrong in like such fundamental ways. I have such empathy for that.
Oh yeah, me too. Like I think you communicated it quite well. Yeah, I felt a tinge of empathy and sadness toward the end of that book. Yeah,
like I was a dumb, shitty kid once. Like I get it.
Yeah,
it's rough.
Actually, I was when I was reading that, I sort of recalled a bit of I was a bit like that when Game of Thrones was ending. I thought it was I was hanging on to hope. I was hanging on hope right up until like the last season aired, that I thought it was setting up something really grand and like complex and interesting, and it wasn't. And it broke my heart.
Yeah, it's a real taste making thing too, isn't it? Where I don't know, I speak for myself here, but I think that moment with Sherlock for me was when I suddenly realized what I like in stories is not the thing I thought I liked in stories. I thought it was this idea of like everything should build up and be this like, but then I think what I realized is like, oh no, I actually just really like stories that like are like it's a story that finishes and everything in it's really tight and works well and like has a thing it's interested in. I think for me that definitely changed. My books would be fucking terrible if I hadn't gone through that experience. Like I would just be bad. I would just be a far worse story. I'd be Stephen Moffat still. I'd be trying to do what he does.
Ooh.
Yeah, got him. Look, it's not a secret. In the book, I drag him pretty thoroughly, all right? Even-handedly, but thoroughly. I'm obsessed with that guy. What an absolute loose unit. But no, I all to say, like, if you like the show and the kinds of ways that we think about stuff, that's a really exciting book. I am midway through producing the audiobook, so if you prefer to listen to stuff, that should be out at some point. All of that is over at UnderInk.Press, wherever you get your ebooks, your Amazons, your Appleses, your wherever's, all that stuff is also up there. We appreciate the heck out of any support you can give us, and that'll do it. Pat, let's look ahead to the end of the Defenders. I'm very excited.
I'm beyond excited.
Which is not a grim thing to say about a television program, but hey, this is where we found ourselves.
Yeah.
So the order of business is next time we will finish the Defenders, then we'll do season 3, and then we'll still have to. Me and Pat haven't worked out production wise how we're going to do it, but then we'll do Pat's perspective season 4. Is his pitch for what one might do had the economic incentives of franchises not destroyed art in end stage capitalism.
Yeah, well said.
All right, we're getting out of here. We'll catch you guys next time.